Today, the Below Average Joe's MMA show present the weekend recap. No UFC this weekend, but still getting our MMA fix as Bellator 293, the 2023 PFL Season 1, and Gamebred Boxing even carrying the load this weekend. Who had the best card? Who took advantage the most of a non UFC fight weekend?
Mm.
We will find out all this and more. And it all starts right now. Welcome back, everybody. Ooh, slight voice crack there.
Uh,
Thank you for joining us for this recap edition of the show.
mm.
I am the man matching the sign behind me, Noah Baker.
Oh,
The man to my right, that's Dominic Slee. Hi, Dom. How are you today?
hi Noah. Top of the morning to you. A little earlier than we're used to on this Sunday, but I'm kind of digging it. The vibes are high. The UFC off weekend didn't necessarily feel too missed, honestly. Like it was a really, really busy combat sports weekend. So I think we've got a good little recap to go over today. I'm doing well. We've got a little lunch for my grandma's birthday coming up, then a little golf, then a little golf tomorrow, weather pending. You know how that goes in Ohio. Life's good. Life's great. Noah, how was your weekend? And I know you even have some fun plans this afternoon as well with some good food.
Yep. Good food this afternoon. It's been a great weekend. Despite no UFC, Dom, I mean, just a complete combat sports overload. I had
Mhm.
three boxing cards I was watching, including Game Bread. We had PFL, we had Bellator, and Dominic. Don't forget, night one of WrestleMania was last night.
Very true.
Did you actually watch any of WrestleMania?
Oh no, I may or may not have had 8 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. tuned in the whole time on the television with the PFL on the laptop and miscellaneous things on the cell phone. It
Nice.
was quite a night last night.
Yeah. Actually, kind of blew me away how good WrestleMania was, considering I'm a guy who has not followed wrestling in any capacity for 12, 13 plus years. I was
Yep.
pretty blown away by it, to be honest. And I'll probably be watching tonight too. So, but I understand there's probably a lot of people listening that absolutely hate WWE and are like, what the fuck are these MMA about? So we will move on and talk from Temecula, California. I'm gonna kind of ask for just a simple little question here to kind of start us out, Dom.
Okay.
Because part of what I think is going to be interesting about today's discussion is you have all these cards we're talking about who are going up against each other, but not against the UFC. So it is
Mm-hmm.
kind of a big opportunity to try to grab some of those eyes who, those hardcore MMA fans who need their fix, can't get it from the UFC this weekend. They might go wandering and stumble across either a Bellator or PFL. So I guess when you look at this Bellator 293 card, not the most talent stacked
Mm-hmm.
um, card ever, not even close. Maybe a little weird in the bout order. Kind of felt like the co-main should have been the main event here. But
Mm.
with that being said, you know, in terms of what Bellator 293 had to offer in the octagon, in the cage, give me like a one sentence or a couple sentences like your feelings about the card as a whole.
How about like pleasantly surprised? Maybe that's a
Okay.
decent little term for Bellator
Okay.
293.
All right.
I felt that we talked about the main card being pretty solid. You know, again, not top heavy with names like Noah said, but it was just a solid card. So it had some ranked fighters, had some implications in a couple of the fights. And for the most part, they delivered even throughout the prelims, a plethora of finishes as well. I mean, I feel like for not having, it's like that fight night of Bellator, no title fight or anything, just kind of like a random one that they put together. I feel like it could have went as good as they would have wanted it to be honest. What do you think?
I'm gonna say exceeded expectations, but
Mhm.
still disappointing. And here's why.
Mm.
The card was definitely like, I mean, pretty fun watch for the most part. There was a
Mhm.
couple pretty low points, and we'll talk about those. But um, in terms of the kind of name value you were getting and stuff, and even though yes, there was a lot of big prospects on here. I mean, most fights kept me relatively entertained. Sometimes that's a problem for Bellator, to be honest with you. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know what
Yeah.
it is with their matchmaking, but it feels like a lot of their fight nights end up being sort of dull. Like it's just the way that I kind of walk away feeling sometimes with them. Um, but what I mean by disappointing is maybe I'm looking too far into this whole no UFC this weekend. Like you should take advantage of that, but it
Mhm.
doesn't feel like they really did. It just doesn't feel like this would be the card to bring new people over or
Mm.
even catch the interest of somebody who was looking for something else to begin with. Showtime's
Right.
already not the most easily accessible service. I mean, it is a streaming service now, so I guess it kind of is just as accessible as like an ESPN Plus. But PFL, ESPN Plus, if you watch the UFC regularly, much easier to.
Right.
There's another voice crack. Much easier to
Yeah.
find it. But with that being said, though, I do think the fights for the most part turned out okay. And
Mhm.
truthfully, Dom, in terms of MMA, I think this was the better product this weekend. I think this
Yep.
blew the first PFL card out of the water, and PFL
Yep.
on paper should have been an easy win for them.
100%. 100% accurate.
Yeah. So we'll kind of just go through the card here. I will start with the main event. Daniel James once again, Dom. Second fight in Bellator, second finish, second TKO knockout. This time comes 26 seconds in round number 3 against Marcelo Golm. What started out as a pretty tentative affair for the first 2 rounds, not a whole lot going on. Daniel James' corner pleading with him to let the hands go. And sure enough, doesn't even take him 30 seconds into that third round, and he puts away Marcelo Golm. So Dominic, Daniel James afterwards talking to Big John in the cage. Ryan Bader was in the front row.
Mhm.
He sort of called for that matchup, and I guess my question is: have you seen enough from Daniel James where you would actually be interested or excited about a potential matchup with Ryan Bader?
Oh, absolutely, Noah. Again, at the end of the day, he's 41. He doesn't have time to waste, man, and he's calling for
Yeah.
it. There's no better way to start your Bellator career than 2 straight, TKO victories over ranked opponents, and both coming from behind, by the way. Not that he was getting dominated in either, but especially like in this one, it was pretty obvious he was down big time. And man, his coach pleaded, and he answered the call, came out firing, and got the finish in 26 seconds. Respectful call out, well spoken guy, Daniel James from Chicago. He's been through it. He's talked about being in the streets and everything, and now he's here pursuing the dream. Give him the shot, man. I mean, again, Fedor, we just had retire. Everybody else ahead of Daniel James, who will soon be number 5 at least when the new rankings come out, just seems a little murky. Bader was there. They were eyeing each other, talking to each other. It just makes perfect sense. I know the guy's only had 2 fights, but he is on a 5-fight win streak, all by KO TKO at the end of the day, even before Bellator. I'm here for it, Noah. I'm here for it.
I'm not against it for sure. I mean, it's kind of a now or never thing. He would
Mm,
be a massive underdog against Ryan Bader. There's no doubt about that. But, I'm not, that shouldn't necessarily dictate if someone gets a title shot. I kind of
mm,
mentioned something like that about Kat Zingano, who we'll talk about, but I don't think that should necessarily affect if they earn the title shot, they should get it because anything can happen on any given night.
mm-hmm.
Betting odds should not dictate or a perceived chances of winning by
Yeah.
someone like us should not dictate how someone gets a title shot. I will just say, the only other competition he would probably have for that title shot right now is Linton Vassell, who just got that big
Mm-hmm.
knockout win over Valentin Moldavsky. But
True.
it does seem like they were kind of setting it up here. Ryan Bader in the
Yeah.
front row. I mean, it's a relatively respectful call out by Daniel James, but I feel like that's the fight we're going to get next, even if,
Mm,
Linton Vassell may have a proper claim to be the number one contender. He
Yeah.
is literally the number one contender. But yeah, I just Daniel James is fun, man. He kind of reminds
Mm.
me of like Derek Lewis a little bit, like not
Yeah,
the most
yeah.
skilled
Yeah.
guy, not a very technical guy, but carries big power and is just big and strong as shit, man. I mean,
Mhm.
we've seen where that can take you at heavyweight, and I don't know if it can take him to a title because I don't know if we've quite seen, someone who maybe lacks some of the skill that these other heavyweights do be able to reach the pinnacle. But
Yep.
it's already done more than probably he thought he'd get to. I mean, just 2 fights into his Bellator career, he's on the knocking on the door for a title shot.
Yeah, and you even said it like on Friday. There was a reason, regardless of how big the Bellator card was, that he was put in this headlining spot. So it just seems like
Mhm.
that's what they're planning to do with him. So
It makes sense when you had Bader there because
yeah,
it makes me wonder if Marcelo Golm had won, if they were going to do the same thing.
right. Yeah.
So seems like this might have been the plan. That maybe is why it was in that position, like you said.
Hmm.
And yeah, I'm not against it. Daniel James, 41 years old. Strike while the iron's hot.
Yes, exactly.
So Dominic, looking down the rest of this card, where do your eyes go next? Where do you wander to, sir?
There's one guy I definitely want to talk on, but we definitely should at least mention this co-main first. Kat Zingano, Leah McCourt seemed like a number one contender fight, even though Kat had already basically earned a title fight 2 fights ago. I feel like in Bellator, honestly, like not a bad fight here. Really scrappy, got a bit bloody. That knee in the third round gashed Leah
Ooh,
McCourt's face
yeah.
badly, but I'm telling you, I almost pulled the trigger on a Leah McCourt money line play going in, but I held off. And I don't know, man. It was just a really competitive fight. I felt like it was going to be that line, like minus 300 plus for Gonzaga for Zingano sounded a bit wild to me. But it was a good fight. It was competitive. Leah held her all. I felt like this would be her moment to capitalize. It kind of felt like one of those trap fights that you've talked about in the past where like
Mm.
it seems like a fight that didn't need to happen. Someone's giving up their title shot essentially to fight Leah McCourt, but she didn't get it done. I saw some people talking about Kat's fight IQ, how she could have made this a little bit safer, a little bit cleaner. But I don't know, man. I feel like stylistically, there was never really a route where she was just going to run through Leah. What are your thoughts on how the fight played out?
That's interesting. Leah McCourt's definitely a solid fighter, but I had yet to see anything from her
Mm,
that told me that she would be very competitive. I just thought even Kat Zingano at her age, um, I thought was just a step above,
mm,
someone like Leah McCourt. Even though rankings wise, this matchup sort of made sense if Kat's not getting a title fight, but it ended up being much closer than that, and that was more of a credit to Leah McCourt than a detriment to Kat Zingano.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you could pick holes in the fight IQ, but I thought it was a very fun fight. I think it
Mm,
proved why it should have been a 5-round fight because it ended up being very close
yeah.
by the end. One judge did give it 30-27 to Kat Zingano, which I think is pretty nuts, to be honest.
Mm,
I thought this was clearly a 29-28, no matter which way
yeah.
you scored it. And with this, again, we're going to say it. Kat Zingano should get a title shot off of this. And again, she'll probably be a plus 600, 700
Yeah.
underdog against per Cyborg, but it doesn't matter. She earned it. Like, what? I don't understand what we're waiting on here.
Yeah.
I saw someone responded when you put the tweet out about it. Someone responded saying that they felt like that she just wanted the title fight without having to fight Cyborg or something like that.
I've
And
never really heard
I,
that though.
I I had I didn't know where that came from. I kind of
Yeah.
wanted to know more about where, but if that's the case, I mean, I could see. Well, it would make sense because it's like, yeah, I don't want to go through the
Well,
literally toughest
yeah.
fight,
Yeah.
but it is interesting, Dom. We have not heard anything about Chris Cyborg.
That's the
Like
thing here. What's going
she
on?
had that boxing match in December, but
Yeah.
even back then, Dom, she was considered a free agent, I thought. And I don't think
Yeah.
she's been officially re-signed with Bellator.
Yeah.
Isn't that strange?
It is weird, and we're about to be we're 3 weeks away on the dot from when we're recording this from her last fight being 1 year ago against Arlene Blencowe the second time at Bellator 279, and we've not heard a peep about her MMA related, right? Again, you said she had the boxing fight and whatnot that went well, but other than that, nothing. And there were rumors of, the free agency, and then even a year ago,
Yeah.
of course, we were talking
You want
about
to hear
her and Kayla.
some other things
Please.
about it? That this adds even more fuel to that fire. Kat Zingano, I believe, had done some interviews this week or talking to reporters, whatever it was. She said that it was kind of a chaotic lead up to this fight because there were times where it was going to be for an interim title. There were times where it might be for
Oh,
the undisputed title, and
wow.
then it ended up not being for either. So imagine that. They even if you are to take her at her word, there were times they considered putting the undisputed title on this fight, which I think speaks to they're not 100% sure where their relationship with Cyborg sits right now.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
that would make things it would be a big shame, a big blow to this women's featherweight class if Chris Cyborg were to just walk away. You obviously want one of these women to eventually dethrone her so that way they can kind of get some of that rub of being like the person who beat Chris Cyborg, like who looked unbeatable in Bellator.
Well, yeah, exactly. If she is to walk away, it's a big miss to not have this for a title because now, outside of Kat, there's no one else that deserves to fight her for it. So she almost has to just be given the title because, like, Pam Sorensen, for example, is number 5 in this division, was on this card. She lost to someone that wasn't even, I don't even know if she had fought in Bellator prior, but if so, only like one fight. So, like, again, I said it on Friday, women's featherweight just not in a good spot right now across any weight or any organization. But wow, I'm actually glad you brought that up because I had no idea. I hope these two get to fight, but maybe not. Maybe Cyborg's out the door.
So I know who you're going to want to talk about
Mhm.
next, but I'm going to take this time to I'll just mention John Salter
Mhm.
retired after getting a unanimous decision win over Aaron Jeffery.
Yep.
Pretty bad fight,
Yep. Yep.
quite a snoozer. I mean, and Aaron Jeffery just unfortunately missed opportunity by him there.
I think
You
so.
get a guy who apparently, I mean, coming off a win, he wins the fight and then he retires. It's very rare.
Yeah.
So, you have to think that was the plan for him going in. You got a guy on his way out, Aaron Jeffery, a lot of momentum, couldn't quite jump on that opportunity. He could have potentially earned a title shot, so that sort of sets him back. And then I'll also mention, Dom, we had talked about a lot of the prospects on this card. And of course, the man I choose to talk about was none other than Joey Davis, Division
Yeah.
II wrestling stud. What I say, over 120 matches, no losses, 4 straight national championships at the Division II level. Dominic, he lost as minus 1,800 favorite to
Ooh,
Jeff
ooh, ooh.
Creighton by split decision. And let me tell you, Dom, when I'm watching this fight, I am losing my fucking mind because Joey Davis had one of the most baffling performances of the night. Being that he was such a heavy favorite, being that he had, all this sort of, I don't know if hype's the right word, but he comes from such a prestigious background.
Yep.
I
Yep.
expect him to look at least good here. Dominic, he would land takedowns on Jeff Creighton. I don't know if he did a single shot at ground and pound on any takedowns. He essentially was looking to just lay and pray. I mean, I kid you not. It very much reminded me of wrestlers like in the tournament days
Yeah.
of the UFC,
Yeah.
like real early days. It was the most baffling performance. And to be honest, he looked pretty bad. So that is a major setback. That is a historic upset. If you want to go off betting odds in MMA, I
Yep.
mean, Dominic, that is one of the biggest upsets in MMA history. And
Yep.
it was still a fucking split decision. And when that happened, dude, I knew, you know, I kind of had this feeling in the back of my head, like, oh boy, this weekend's about to be rough, isn't
That
it?
set the
And
tone. Yeah.
but yeah, so that's my thoughts there. I just wanted to mention that, and then I'll kick it to you so you can talk about your prospect who actually had a great performance.
Yeah. One quick point on Joey Davis, and this is maybe only if you can like remember this. That's two now humongous prospects over 1,000 favorite odds that have came in Bellator in the last couple months and both lost. The other one, I'm blanking on the name. Apologies. He was a
I'll
stud
probably
wrestler
find
as well
it.
and
Was
got
he on
knocked
that?
out, I think, in the
Wasn't he?
first
Was he
round.
on that? Was it Pat Downey?
Yes, I think that's what it was. He was like a minus 1,000 and something and
Yeah.
got knocked
Was
out, I
that on
think, in
the
the first
wait,
round.
was that on the card we went to?
No, I thought it was the beginning of this year, like an early
Okay.
2023
Yeah, yeah,
card or
yeah.
something,
It might
but
have been. Okay, it probably
that was
was.
another
Um,
stud wrestler that lost
yeah.
prospect-wise.
So that's the thing with Bellator, man. We always joke about the heavy favorites parlay,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
their odds are so juiced, and these are guys that haven't really proven it. You know,
yeah,
Joey
yeah,
Davis has all the accolades in the world as a wrestler, as a amateur wrestler, but then applied to MMA, man, he just looked absolutely rough here. And being that he
yeah,
was so young in his career, it's it's tough to really take. And yes, I mean, I'll fully admit, and I'll talk about this more in the bet slip. Like, I typically would not touch a minus 1,500 in a parlay, but I got. I mean, it didn't matter because I also had
yeah,
Aaron Jeffery, which I know
yeah,
you had the same parlay, so
yeah.
it didn't matter because of Aaron Jeffery. But the only reason I had Joey Davis in there was because it got me to plus money. That was the only
Yeah,
reason.
yeah.
And
It's
that was a rough one, man. It did not feel good when that didn't hit. Like, I was not feeling too good, and I had good reason to believe that. And we'll talk about that later. So Archie Colgan.
yes. Archie Colgan, lightweight for Bellator. They got something special here, I believe. Now Archie Colgan 7-0, 6 finishes, 3-0 in Bellator with 3 straight TKO wins. This one over Justin Montalvo, who was also 2-0 in Bellator, who was also undefeated coming into this fight. The odds were like minus 270, I think, or something for Archie, minus 300. Um, and I expected him to be the favorite, but there was a reason it was a little bit smaller than some of these other fights. Montalvo showed a little bit of that dog. He was throwing some big shots, but Archie played pretty well defensively on the feet for a guy that has a wrestling pedigree background. The dude's got hands. He's got a complete skill set to be just 27 and only 7-0 in his professional career. I mean, this guy, as he enters his prime these next 2 or 3 years, I think we're going to see some really special stuff out of this kid. And honestly, Noah, like this time next year, he might be cracking the top 5 at lightweight. I don't know how they're going to push him. Sometimes they push guys slow, and it just depends, like if they build him all the way up. He hasn't had every single fight in Bellator. He's even fought in Eagle FC. So I'm just excited. I'm keeping my eyes on Archie. We got to see him live in Chicago. The dude's a stud. The dude's a beast. I'm thinking future Bellator champion down the line, Noah.
I like that. I like that you have the confidence in him. I would have said the same about Joey Davis a couple nights ago. So I guess you just never know. But
Yeah,
no, Archie
yeah.
Colgan definitely had the tougher matchup here. He was not some like massive favorite. He was only like a
Mm-mm.
minus 240, minus
Yep.
250. And but he made it look easy. And that's what you
Mm.
want to see out of a guy who has so much promise, so much potential. So
Yes.
definitely a good performance for him. And with that, Dominic, we will move on to the 2023 PFL debut.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. This card,
Boy.
when you talk about a card that I like, when you talk about disappointment, I don't even think that like does it
Mm.
justice to explain
Yeah.
how I felt by the end of this card, Dom. I was
Yeah.
so excited for the PFL's season debut in prime time on
Mm-hmm.
ESPN.
Mm-hmm.
No UFC to compete against it.
Mm-hmm.
And this might have been the worst PFL card I've ever seen.
Yeah. It was rough. It was rough.
I mean, I'm not even being dramatic. This card was bad, like so bad. Like
Yeah.
every fight was bad.
Yeah.
There was obviously a couple finishes throughout the night, but it was a frustrating watch to be sure. It's just like, damn, it's like even when the UFC just is doing nothing, somehow these different, they're like, I can't even be mad at the PFL. Like they put the matchups
No.
together and they look good.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
just, God, like all these fights that you thought would deliver were just so one-sided
Stinkers.
or boring.
Yeah.
So there was a ton of wrestling throughout the night, which is not a problem except for the fact that it was not much done with it.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
not a whole lot of advancing position, ground and pound, nothing, nothing.
Mm. Mhm.
And yeah, it's a big disappointment to start the season off that way. But there is some key takeaways here.
Of
Your main
course.
event, Dominic, Brendan Loughnane, last season's featherweight champ,
Mm.
gets off to a hot start again. He earns
Mm.
5 points going into his second bout, where he gets the TKO due to leg kicks in round number
Oh.
2,
Oh.
a minute and 11 seconds for Marlon Moraes. So, Dominic, when I was watching this fight, by the time it was over, I kind of just had, obviously Brendan Loughnane looked fantastic here. But man, Marlon Moraes, like, probably should have stayed retired.
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously, I'm not one to tell someone what to do with their career, but now he's being finished by leg kicks. Dominic, this is the guy who nearly beat Henry Cejudo with leg kicks when he fought for the bantamweight title. And now, just a few years later, he gets hit with about, I mean, maybe 8 good clean leg kicks, and then he's done.
Yeah.
I don't know it just seems like everything's falling apart for Marlon. It's really sad. I mean, it's very sad
It
to
is.
watch.
Yeah. Yeah.
Trust me. I mean, in some ways, I prefer him to go like this than what we had seen previously, where he was being knocked out cold with shots to the head.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's like, even when it's not the head, right? Like he seemed to be all had the wherewithal, seemed to be doing fine. And then about a minute left in that first round, all of a sudden you notice the wincing when he started getting kicked in the leg. It's like, God, this guy's just he's kind of brittle nowadays. Like it's really a shame, because he was at one time such a feared and just powerful guy, and his body's just failing him at this point.
Yeah, it honestly feels crazy at how quickly this really started. He's lost 6 straight fights via KO, TKO. Had a win over against Jose Aldo, arguably lost that one, and before that got TKO'd by Henry Cejudo. This is a guy that has lost 7 straight fights, all by getting finished. Man, that's not a good stat to have. Even if this one was a leg kick, it shows. This all happened in a matter of, 3 years, essentially, a little under 3 years. It's kind of crazy when you put it that way. And he's in the season. Like, he has to fight
Mhm.
again against someone else. What if it happens a 7th straight time? That's just
Yeah.
brutal, brutal stuff. I don't know what the next matchups are. I could only hope that he would win. Honestly, I don't even know if I need to see him in the tournament. But, maybe a Cinderella story will happen. But Brendan Loughnane, I guess, to end it positively, looked amazing. Looked even better, man.
Yeah.
I think it was 22 total strikes landed in the 6 minutes of total fight time. 18 of them were leg kicks, and he was going inside, outside. Both of Marlon's legs were just absolutely battered. I'm shocked they even started the second round, to be honest. Brendan Loughnane is putting it all together, man. That's why he got the Joey last year. Shit, he might be trying to get 2 straight Joeys for all I know. He looked by far and away the best of all the featherweights that fought last night. It wasn't even really close. Like, he was levels above the way the others looked. And I know it's just night one, but if he keeps like this and the others keep how they were last night, he runs away with 2 straight titles.
I stand by Movlid Khaybulaev is going to be a tough fight for him.
Mm,
But
yeah,
don't get me
that's the
wrong, this
story.
was a great start, but it was sort of a matchup against a very
Mm.
how do I even word it, Dom? Marlon Rice looked so good in his debut before he gets finished. Like, he's a tough guy, but matchup where this is a guy who has no durability left.
Right.
So it's sort of
yeah.
tailor made for a showcase. Meanwhile, don't get me wrong, Khaybulaev was a massive favorite against Ryoji Kudo, but he did not lose a second of that
Yeah.
fight.
No, you're right.
So I can't say that when I walk out of this card, I'm thinking Loughnane is like a heavy favorite to repeat. But I will say he looked better than he did the last time we saw him. And that
Yeah.
sort of speaks to welterweight champion of the UFC, Leon Edwards. Remember his quote about, at least I think it was his quote, or maybe it was a quote from that he was repeating from someone else. When you become a champion, you become like 30% better.
I saw
It's like
that.
you
Yeah.
have the
Yeah.
confidence. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if that's definitely not his quote. That's
Teddy said it too, though.
Freddie.
Teddy Atlas.
I think that's who it comes from. It was either him or Freddie Roach. I couldn't remember who it was, but um, I think that quote really resonates here. Brendan
Yeah.
Loughnane had probably struggled a little bit with his confidence. He had been turned away after Contender
Yeah.
Series when he seemed like such a easy, tailor-made guy to be brought in. Then in the PFL, he had some bumps on the road, right? Despite high expectations, he seemed to not be meeting those.
Mm-hmm.
Then he finally does. And now he kind of has the confidence to know that he's really that guy. He's the guy that everybody thought he could be. And he did look better here.
Yeah.
So while before these fights went down, I honestly probably would have favored Khaybulaev over Loughnane. Now I feel like when that fight inevitably happens, it's going to be a war. And I'm excited for that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And I mean, we kind of talked, but there I kind of talked about Khaybulaev. But as far as the rest of the card, Dom, again, I said a lot of things, a lot of not so good things about this card. The biggest disappointment probably got to be Rob Wilkinson, Thiago Santos, right?
A fight that had the expectations that it did couldn't have went any more of the opposite direction than how this fight played out. Like, wow. Didn't see it going that way.
Yeah, it's when I say disappointment, I can't be mad at it because I recognize that Rob Wilkinson did the right thing here.
Yeah.
He had a
Yeah.
good performance. Um, Thiago just couldn't keep the distance with Rob. Rob's just a real big guy, real strong guy, and continued to close distance, clinch, go for takedowns. And once he had takedowns, Thiago really struggled to get back to his feet or do really anything. So
Yeah.
Wilkinson did a pretty good job of limiting Thiago's power. Thiago did have some nice moments, like in round 3. That was the round that he won, but nothing. It was not enough. Rob Wilkinson, once again, gets a win. It's not the most exciting fashion, but we know what this guy's capable of
Yeah.
from last season. And he played it smart here. It wasn't what I expected. I really did not expect him to grapple that much. And with that, he's got 3 points, and I expect him to pick it up with the second fight. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree, and I almost feel like I don't know. Maybe he was just trying to play some damage control. He was respecting that power, Thiago, regardless of what we've seen these past 6 or 7 fights from him in the UFC. He played it smart. He did what he had to do to win. He did show a new wrinkle, I guess, like he has grappling that we didn't necessarily see last year because he was knocking everybody out in 4 straight fights. So I mean, I guess that's a slight takeaway, but I'm in the same boat as you. I think come the next fight, of course, matchup pending he will turn it up a notch because at the end of the day, you still want to try and get that number 1 seed if you can as well. So I'm with you there.
Yeah, and I know we already kind of said Loughnane and Khaybulaev sort of feel like the front runners at featherweight, but I will say Bubba Jenkins looked really good in his fight with Chris Wade, just avenging a prior fight that those two had
Mm-hmm.
had, and he looked really good. I am not used to seeing Chris Wade kind of look that out of answers, that out of
Yeah.
options, and uh, Bubba Jenkins didn't necessarily blow me away, but I thought he looked very good. And again, I was just hoping the next fights for a lot of these guys, we see a little bit more urgency, a little bit more interest in getting that finish. These points are supposed to matter. So
Mm-hmm.
why does it feel like so many guys play it safe, And but I thought he did look good. As far as the rest of this card, Dom, anything that stood out to you, either good or bad, from everybody else?
I mean, the two quick sixes we had back to back for the light heavyweights, Martin Hamlet and Josh Silveira, both got two very quick first round subs in and out, 6 points on the board. They're obviously going to be up there at first and second place. I feel like that's how you want to come out on the first event. You want to come out and make a statement. Josh Silveira had a little bit of hype behind him from last year's Challenger Series. Martin Hamlet has been in the finals before in 2021 against Bruno Capoloza. So yeah, I mean, good on them to really make a statement when the defending champion didn't necessarily do that. I think it just probably at least helps build their confidence moving forward in this tournament. So that was really about it.
Yeah, I kind of said I felt like a lot of people were looking at that co-main as being sort of like for the front runner spot for the rest of the way.
Yeah, that's how
And
I
while
felt.
that's true, while that's true, I still felt like the division was very wide open this year. And Josh Silveira is a guy that I'm very excited about, have been very high on, and he looked really good. Martin Hamlet looked pretty terrifyingly good, to be honest with you. I mean, he looked really good.
Yeah.
I did not expect that out of him. The less said about Will Fleury, Christoph Jocko, the better. But
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely think this light heavyweight division is a bit wide open. I think you have. I still think Thiago is still in the mix. I mean,
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
think he can't come out in his next fight and show some explosiveness and get a quick six like you're talking about, and all of a sudden he's right back in there.
Yeah, for sure.
So Dominic, with that, we will move on to Gamebred Boxing 4. The fourth of these events, the first one that really put this emphasis on kind of some star power from the MMA world, especially headlined by Roy Jones Jr. and Anthony Pettis. Um, I was checking in on this card for the majority of the night. Like, not every fight was I all that interested in, and there was so much on that I was kind of bouncing back and forth. I didn't have
Yeah.
enough screens for all this stuff, Dom.
Yeah.
So, all I'll say, impressions. I think this was actually the best card of the weekend that we covered.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it probably had the worst main event, but the rest of the way, I thought this card delivered with a lot of fun, like exciting fights where people were really looking to fight. They were really phone booth boxing a lot of the time. I actually walked away being very impressed by what I saw. Presentation wise, nothing special. Nothing that you probably can't get from watching a regional MMA promotion or some sort of
Okay.
smaller boxing show. It didn't feel, I guess the answer, Dom, is it didn't feel like a very big event, a very special event in that way.
Hmm.
But that's something that can be worked on. I cared more about just what the product would look like.
Hmm.
And the fights I'll just mention real quick. Pearl Gonzalez, Gina Mazzani was like kind of blew me away. Absolute war that those two went to. Um, Gina Mazzani actually pulled off the upset there. She was like a plus 250 or something like that, underdog. So big win for her. I think that was a split decision as well. Uh, Jose Aldo and Jeremy Stevens fought to a draw. Once again, though, Dom, I mean, those two guys really went for it. I don't think either one of them took a back step. Like, they both were phone booth
Mm.
right up against each other, high guards, just really mixing it up the entire fight. And it was very fun to watch. Truthfully, Jeremy Stevens surprised me with how much he held his own here. I mean, you could argue Aldo probably, the one scorecard that had a winner picked was Aldo. It was a majority draw. But Jeremy Stevens surprised me by how competitive he made this fight, especially in the later rounds. He really came back. And then Vitor Belfort and Jacare Souza was surprisingly better than I thought it would be. I really thought we were in for a rough ending for Jacare
Yeah.
because Vitor dropped him probably 3 times in the first 3 rounds.
Ooh.
But then Vitor seemed to kind of gas a little bit. And then Jacare came back big time in the final 3 rounds. Not enough because obviously in boxing, there's a greater emphasis on if you get dropped, it's usually a 10-8
Mm.
round. So because of that, Vitor had gathered a bit of a lead. But man, it was getting a little dicey there at the end. Jacare looked absolutely massive, Dom. I'm not sure if you saw any pictures of him, but this is TRT Tour that we're talking about here. And Jacare looked probably double as wide as him. Like, I kid you not, it was freaky. It was freaky how big he looked. I mean, this fight was fought at it was that cruiserweight, which I always forget boxing weight classes. I want to say it was like 195 or I don't know, something like that. Jacare looked every bit of like 220, 230. Like, massive. Vitor looked really good though, especially early. The speed, just looked very like truthfully, what's weird is Jacare definitely made a good account of himself toward the end, but he did look slow. He looked old. I don't know if I necessarily need to see more from him in this capacity.
Yeah.
But Vitor, even at 45 years old, I wouldn't hate it. You know, the guy that he looked good. Like, he did slow down big time, but I mean, I can't say I wouldn't be mad at him being on another one of these cards. He looked good. I mean,
isn't that crazy too? Like 26 years ago, he was 19 coming into the UFC, and now he's still got some speed and some hands. That's crazy, dude.
The card he debuted on for the UFC is the same card Joe Rogan debuted on for the UFC. If that
Gosh, man. Wow.
And then that main event, Roy Jones Jr., Anthony Pettis. Anthony Pettis ultimately wins a majority decision. Didn't expect to say that. Just didn't. I know there's a huge age gap. Roy Jones Jr., 54 years old. He was shotborn 15 years ago. Like, that's how past his prime he is. Anthony Pettis also passed his prime in MMA, but still a guy that's under 40 years old. And I still felt like I have a hard time seeing Anthony Pettis winning this bout. Like, it just even with the age advantages there, like, I was like, Roy Jones Jr. is just an all-time boxer. Like, there's no shot that he's going to lose this, right? No, he lost it. I don't know if I saw some people were kind of like saying one way or another. Wasn't sure if they agreed with the scorecards. I couldn't really score it live. It did feel like Roy Jones Jr. I mean, he looked old. He looked slow. He kind of looked like he didn't want to be there, which was interesting. Anthony Pettis definitely seemed like he took this more seriously. I think it was quite an honor for him to share the ring with Roy Jones. He sort of said that in the lead up. So I think because of that, there was more effort on his part. And that's kind of why he ended up taking this fight. He just really wanted it. And a guy like Roy Jones just didn't really care. And I can't blame him. I mean, he came off the couch probably to do this. And now off back to retirement he goes. So main event was a bit of a shit show, to be honest. But, like, nobody got hurt.
Like,
which is fine. It's really not that big of a deal. The rest of the card, though, Dom, I thought I was very pleasantly surprised and wouldn't mind those names I mentioned outside of probably Jacare. The rest of them, I'd be like happy to see them on another card, another boxing card. Jeremy Stevens, Aldo, Belfort, Pro Gonzalez, Gina Mazzani. I thought they all held their own here.
Yeah, I know even Pro Gonzalez has done some fucking nutty fights in bare knuckle that I've seen clips and highlights of. So that was cool to hear about. And we kind of probably figured going in that like Jeremy and Aldo would probably be relatively competitive. You know what I mean? Like Jose's always had good hands. Jeremy looked good in the PFL last year. And then honestly, I just had one question for you, and it was, is it hard for you to like? I know you didn't probably have expectations for Anthony going in, but did he at least like, regardless of Roy Jones, did he at least look good on the feet? Like, would you like to see him do something like this again?
I think it's hard for me to judge without giving him just a fight that this was a really weird one. Like, it's really hard to explain. Anybody who watched it will know what I'm talking about. It's just like, it almost felt like a sparring match. Like, it was weird. But a lot of that was on Roy Jones, who again just didn't really seem to want to be there.
Yeah.
And I can't blame him for playing it safe. I mean, he's 54. He's been knocked out a lot at this
Yeah.
point. He's probably just not, he's not looking to get hurt here,
Yeah.
But this, even when I bought that exhibition or whatever, I guess it wasn't an exhibition, but that fight him and Mike Tyson had a few years ago. He was a couple years younger, but he's still over 50 years old. And, even there, like he showed a little more urgency, a little more interest in trying to get a win than he did here. But yeah, I'm all for Anthony Pettis boxing again. Do that next one will tell me probably more if I'm like, okay, he really is just doesn't have anything left or doesn't have anything to offer here. But, respect to him. Regardless of the age, he gets a win over Roy Jones Jr. in his professional boxing debut. Like, who can say that?
Hey, I mean, and maybe his next one would be him versus Vitor, since they were close in weight class. Maybe, just maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't mind that. Wouldn't mind if they didn't do that either. Just keep guys more in their age. I kind of like keeping guys more in their age classes. Like, just if you're gonna have old guys fight, have them fight old guys.
Older, right? And then 30-year-olds fight 30-year. Yeah.
Considering Jacare and Vitor were like a combined, I want to say 88 or 89 years old here. That fight was much better than it had any right to be.
Yeah. Okay.
Much better. Fair. So that's why I kind of prefer like Aldo and Stevens. Like, you keep the age.
Yeah.
So if you gave Anthony Pettis, like, I'm trying to think of a good example. Someone, because Anthony's, how old is Anthony? Is he like 34,
like
30?
30.
Because he's not as old as he seems to be.
No.
No. And a lot of that's just due to he was fighting so young. For some reason, I was going to say Max Holloway, but I don't think that's
maybe if Nate Diaz ever goes to boxing, they could box each
other. That actually would be, that is perfect. Anthony Pettis, Nate Diaz, that would make a ton of sense to do, like, to be honest. And they have a history. They fought in MMA, so.
Also true.
But yeah, I'll be on the lookout for Gamebred Boxing 5, to be honest with you. Now, $50, way too much. I mean, they need to figure that out. If they're really going to charge for these cards, like, I can't imagine this card sold well at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's that's kind of a problem. Like, it needs to be profitable because I imagine you're paying these guys a good amount of money to do this.
I hope so too, for their sake.
I felt like above $20 is too much. Like, know your role a little bit. That's sort of my feelings on it. I mean, we complained about the PFL championships being $50. This boxing card with legend MMA fighters past their prime definitely should not be $50.
Right. Yeah. I got you.
So we will get into the fight announcements, Dominic. 3 of them to talk about today. Dan 50K Ige taking on Nate Landwehr. These guys, I imagine, will be battling for a little 50K here. That'll be happening at UFC 289 on June 10th. Location TBD. There have been rumors of Canada for this one, but much like our failed Nashville card on May 13th, that is merely just a rumor. So that one will be happening there. Corey Anderson taking on Phil Davis on June 16th, Bellator 297. So Bellator in Chicago, definitely stacking that card. Corey Anderson looked to return to Chicago and get a win this time over Phil Davis. A fun fight there. And 5-round main event on June 17th, Ilia Tuporia taking on Josh Emmett. So Dominic, what do you think? What do you think of these 3 fights? You kind of like all of these? Is there any that stand out to you more? I mean, you definitely had a reaction there to Tuporia Emmett.
Yeah, I love all 3 of these, and 2 featherweight fucking bangers for the UFC. But Tuporia and Emmett as a main event. By the way, respect to Josh Emmett. He just fought in February against Yair. He's bouncing back in June already against a dangerous opponent. Respect for that. That's a sick fight. Tuporia getting his first chance to main event a card. Josh Emmett, the seasoned veteran, still in contention, but like has to win here or it's probably done. a rightful main event. Those are the types that we want to see. Ige Landwehr getting a chance to break into the top 15. It wasn't Caceres like I wanted, but I think I might like this one better against Dan Ige. I mean, my goodness, all three of these fight check every single box that I can think of for me, Noah. Give me your thoughts.
Yeah, the Corey Anderson Phil Davis fight. My only concern with that is the actual entertainment of the fight. Like it's a fight that matters. It's a fight with name value. But that's something about Phil Davis, man. Not the most appealing fight style for the eyes. But again, that's neither here nor there. He's a very good fighter. Corey Anderson, obviously, coming off a pretty disappointing loss in his second title shot opportunity against Vadim Nemkov after the first time he had kind of dominated the fight, and then it ended due to in a no contest here. Looking to get back on track. But yeah, Tuporia Emmett. Josh Emmett's 37 years old. We've heard the stat recently about guys above 35. It does not bode well once you hit that mark in your UFC career. And Ilia Tuporia is a buzzsaw, but he is a guy that has shown like slight vulnerabilities throughout. You know, you look at his fight in London when he took on, I can't remember the guy's name. Yeah, Jai Herbert. Jai Herbert was piecing him up for a while.
Almost finished him.
Tuporia came back and landed an absolute bomb to put him out. But yeah, Josh Emmett, I think I mean, he did get finished by Yair. I mean, from February to June's not that quick, I don't think. If you're a guy that wants to stay active, I mean, that's what, 4 months, 5 months.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great fight, but it's definitely a fight that's set up for Tuporia to make a big splash here. Like Josh Emmett in a vulnerable spot, coming off his one shot at an interim title, 37 years old at featherweight. It feels like all the stars are aligning here for Tuporia to put on a big, big showing.
Yeah, no, I think I agree, man. That's going to be a big test, his biggest yet. That's a big jump. But if he's as legit as he's looked thus far, he should win. So we'll see.
So with that, Dominic, we're going to move on to the below average bet slip.
Uh-oh.
So combined, I believe we go, just going to have to rip the Band-Aid off, minus 7.17 units. Not a whole lot I can really say here, Dominic. I mean, I go 0 for 4 on parlays. I go 4 and 6 on singles. I don't really have much to say in terms of like what I would have done differently. It wasn't my weekend. It just wasn't. If you want to take a look through here, you know, Christoph Jocko lost a split decision in one of my parlays, a fight you could argue that he won. I think the only real loser of that fight were the people watching, because Dominic, his fight with Will Fleury might have been the single worst high-level MMA fight I've ever seen.
That's accurate. That's accurate.
Yeah. I took a stab at Gamebred Boxing. Aldo ends in a draw with Stevens. Vitor gets a win, and then Roy Jones loses. I mean, you know, it's, again, like, it just didn't go my way this week. But there wasn't too many that I thought were, like, bad plays. Like, a lot of these I probably would play again. I mean, Wilkinson Santos under 2.5 felt like a reasonable bet at minus 125. Loughnane Moraes over 1.5 hurt pretty bad, because he was only like a minute away from exceeding that, but his legs were just so battered. It's a major setback, but I don't know. It's I've learned to not. You know, these things happen. I knew it was eventually going to happen. I mean, it's not going to illustrate on the screen because I've only been back in the bet slip for a couple weeks, but I'm still over like pretty close to 20 plus units positive for the year for MMA, boxing combined. So, I mean, it's a setback, but it's like, I mean, I had built up quite enough of a cushion to where a week like this is bound to happen. But I didn't really do anything different, I don't think. You know, no UFC for sure. That sucks. But I did go a lot of plays. But, I mean, I liked pretty much everything I had on here.
Yeah. And that's what matters. It is what it is. Like, everybody's going to have the bad week. And I didn't even get the bet on PFL. I'd like to think I could have maybe helped a little. Fuck, maybe I would have made it worse. So maybe it's just for the best I couldn't. But you're gonna have a bad week. Everybody's gonna have a bad week. It is what it is.
Yeah, so Dominic, we will end the show with the only segment that we know how, a little closing statements. Point of the show where me and Dominic can talk about anything and everything, MMA related or not. So, Dominic, do you have any closing statements for this edition of the show?
Believe it or not, I think I'm hitting my stride here. This is going to be 4 in a row. This one's going to be food related again. Well, I say again because of Cage Side Rewind, but I don't know when that's coming out. But anyways, Chinese food today. PF Chang's today. Noah, you and I have had our rendezvous with Panda Express. Shout out Bowling Green State University. What is the go-to Chinese cuisine of your choosing?
Oh, geez. I mean, I don't eat much Chinese food, but crab rangoons.
Ah, okay. I've never even had those
I mean, I
actually.
might.
So
What, Dom? What
yeah,
are you
yeah,
doing, man? That
I
is
know. Yeah.
maybe the best. That might be the best food I've ever had. I mean,
Damn.
crab rangoons are smacking, dog.
I
Like,
do love
just,
crab meat. So
well, I don't even know if there's crab meat in it, to be honest with you. I mean,
yeah,
I
boy.
think there is, but it's more cream cheese, I think, than anything. I don't even know
Ah,
what's in it, but it's like depending on where you get it, I'm not even sure if it's crab meat,
that
but
makes sense. That
um,
makes sense.
but yeah, no, I my only experience with Chinese food besides, I mean, yeah, I guess it's Chinese food, but Panda Express probably isn't like really the
Yeah,
bar to set for Chinese food.
yeah.
Um, I've been to like some smaller Chinese buffets. The one in Bowling Green is a shout out to what's it called? Old Town Buffet.
Oh yeah,
That
yeah,
place, that place, man. The best
yeah.
hangover food was going there and then just moaning on the couch for like 6 hours because you're in so much pain because you eat so much. Chinese buffets are the shit. Can you always trust them? Maybe not. But I've always walked away satisfied. So, um, Dom, do you have a specific order that you have?
Probably has to be orange chicken fried rice. There's something about it that just having that combination is my favorite go-to. Now, will I get it today? It's possible. It's very possible. It's that or just traditional chicken fried rice stir fry. But yeah, if I had to pick one, it's orange chicken fried rice. But I'm gonna have to put rangoon on the radar now, Noah.
You know, I'm gonna ask you probably a dumb question. There'll probably be some people that are really into food that are
Oh
shocked
no.
by this question. Is hibachi considered Chinese food?
Ooh. I know. Well, I know. For example, I've been to like a Japanese steakhouse, which is a
Okay, so it's
hibachi grill.
okay,
So
so it's probably more of a
Asian
Japanese
cuisine,
thing
you know.
then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if you opened up to that, I do love a good hibachi every now and then.
Oh yeah. There's something about they do all the cool shit on the grill too. They're flipping
Yeah.
stuff in the air. They're lighting the onion ring
Yeah,
on fire. Ooh,
yeah.
it's the experience, man.
Yeah, there's something to a little theater, right, while
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
getting your
Yeah.
food.
Exactly.
Um, as far as for my closing statement, Dom, I know you wanted to talk about it so bad, so I'll actually pose the question so you get a chance to talk about WrestleMania
Oh.
because I felt like you were trying to make a clear stance to not bring it up because I did call you out a little bit for always bringing up WWE on the show. So WrestleMania Night 1, your biggest standout moment. So
Oh
one moment,
man.
whether it's a
One
match, whatever.
one moment. One moment. Okay. Okay. One moment was honestly Rey Mysterio winning. I can't help but tell you that I felt emotional seeing him win that like
Mm.
20 years later. I remember being a little kid having the mask and shit and wrapping it on my head all the time when he would be on SmackDown. So I'd say if I had to pick one, it would be Ray winning. And I know that storyline got really wild and crazy. I kind of just got filled in on the details the last couple of weeks, but it's been ongoing for a long time. He got to do it against his son. His family was there in attendance. He got the Hall of Fame the night before. That's just kind of a perfect storm for me. And honestly, I kind of hope that was like the big hoorah, the big retirement match was him winning last night.
Yeah, I don't think apparently it's not a retirement match, but
Mm,
I guess he's gonna keep going. But it kind of felt like a nice stamp on his
yeah,
career.
yeah.
But yeah, that was the match I was most looking forward to, and I had a lot of fun watching it. I thought everything delivered except what the hell was that that segment with Pat McAfee and The Miz and George Kittle?
Yeah, yeah, that was
Dude,
kinda out of
was
left
that
field.
that was the most clunky, like bizarre. I maybe there's some TV stuff I'm missing there. Like maybe this is up on TV, but watching it here without any context, it felt like the most like thrown in
I think it
half-assed thing I've
was.
ever seen. Like I don't like I like George Kittle. Like I like Pat McAfee and The Miz is awesome, but it fell flat, dude. And it was so weird because everything on that night, if you're into that kind of thing, if you're into a little WWE, if you grew up with it, whatever. I mean, everything was hitting, man. I
Yeah, it
thought every
was.
match was like delivering. And then out of nowhere, you have this segment, and I'm like, what the fuck was that? Like it just like completely took me out of the
Yeah.
moment. Like so weird, just bizarre. And then the Miz basically just got his ass beat, and then that was
I don't think
it.
he did
Like
anything offensively the whole match. It was all
I'm
Pat
like,
McAfee.
Jesus. I'm like, this poor guy. Like, what a company man, I guess. But I don't
Yeah,
know. That was so weird.
yeah. No, I agree. It
But
was definitely out of left field.
yeah. Anyways, my name's Noah Baker. That's Dominic. We are but just two of the below average Joes, and we'll see you guys on Friday.